hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. Talon Mercer wiped his oil-stained hands on a shop rag and stepped back to admire his work. The custom Harley gleamed under the workshop lights, its midnight blue tank reflecting his weathered face. At 38, the lines around his eyes had deepened, carved by desert sun and too many sleepless nights. But his hands remained steady as they had been in Fallujah. The rumble of tires on gravel pulled his attention away. Jace would be home from school. Talon glanced at his watch, 3:15 p.m. Right on time, Dottie stepped outside as the silver SUV pulled up. His son's face appeared at the window, lighting up when he spotted Talon. The boy practically tumbled out of the car in his excitement. "Dad, we made volcanoes today." Jace launched himself forward, and Talon caught him mid-air, swinging him around despite the protest from his bad shoulder. "Careful with him, Talon." Laurel's voice cut through their laughter. "He's not one of your machines." Talon set Jace down, the smile still on his face, but not quite reaching his eyes anymore. "Got it. No fun allowed." Laurel didn't respond to that. She just brushed past him, her perfume lingering in the air between them. Something expensive that her mother had bought her. Something that didn't smell like the woman he'd married 6 years ago. "Mom's mad again," Jace whispered, his small hand finding Talon's. "Not mad, buddy. Just tired." The lie came easily for Jace's sake. "How about you tell me about these volcanoes while I finish up work?" Jace nodded eagerly, following him into the workshop that smelled of motor oil and metal honest smells that made sense to Talon. Unlike the growing coldness in his own home, as Jace chattered about baking soda and vinegar explosions, Talon worked, his hands moving automatically while his mind drifted to the changes in Laurel over the past year. The way her smile never quite formed when they were alone. The mysterious text she'd shield from his view. The growing frequency of her mother's visits. Speaking of the devil, another car pulled up. The black Mercedes that announced Eloise Varner's arrival, like a funeral procession. "Grandma's here," Jace said, but there was a note in his voice that Talon recognized. Wariness. Kids picked up on more than adults gave them credit for. "Why don't you wash up before dinner?" Talon suggested, ruffling Jace's dark hair. "I'll deal with Grandma." Jace nodded and scampered off through the side door that connected to the house. Talon took his time cleaning his tools, delaying the inevitable confrontation. When he finally stepped into the house, he heard their voices from the kitchen. "You can't keep living like this, Laurel." Eloise's voice, cultured and sharp as a blade. "This rustic lifestyle isn't what your father and I raised you for." "Mom, please." "Not tonight." Laurel sounded tired, or perhaps just defeated. Talon rounded the corner. Eloise stood by the kitchen island in her designer suit, not a silver hair out of place despite the 2-hour drive for Portland. Laurel leaned against the counter, arms crossed over her chest. "Evening, Eloise," Talon said, not bothering to fake warmth. "Didn't know you were coming." Eloise's lips thinned. "Laurel invited me for the weekend. We have some family matters to discuss." "I'm family," Talon reminded her. "Or did you forget that part?" Laurel stepped between them. "Mom's just visiting, Talon. She'll stay in the guest room." Her eyes pleaded with him. "Please, can we just have a normal dinner?" Normal. As if anything had been normal lately. "Fine." He turned to wash his hands at the sink, feeling Eloise's disapproving gaze on his back. "What's for dinner?" "I thought we'd order pizza," Laurel said. "I didn't have time to cook." Again, Eloise's disapproval hung in the air. "Pizza sounds great," Talon said, throwing a look at his mother-in-law. "Jace loves pizza. Speaking of my grandson, where is he?" Eloise's voice softened slightly. "Washing up," Talon answered. "He'll be down soon." The evening dragged on like every other visit from Eloise. Pointed comments about the house Talon had built with his own hands. Questions about his little motorcycle business that suggested it was a hobby rather than the successful custom shop it had become. The way she directed most conversation to Laurel and Jace, as if Talon were merely furniture. Bedtime couldn't come fast enough. Talon read to Jace their nightly ritual that no one, not even Eloise, could intrude upon. "Dad," Jace asked as Talon closed the book, "are you and Mom going to split up?" The question hit Talon like a sucker punch. Why would you ask that, buddy? Jace shrugged, pulling his dinosaur comforter up to his chin. Tommy's parents split up, and before they did, they stopped talking to each other. Like you and Mom. Talon swallowed hard. It's complicated, Jace. Grown-up stuff. He brushed the hair from his son's forehead. But no matter what, I will always be your dad. Nothing changes that. Not ever. Promise. Cross my heart, Talon said, making the gesture that always made Jace smile. Now get some sleep. School tomorrow. He kissed his son's forehead and turned off the light, leaving the door cracked just the way Jace liked it. Laurel was already in bed when he entered their bedroom, her back to his side, body curled away from the space he would occupy. He changed in silence and slipped under the covers. Your mother's staying the whole weekend? He asked the darkness. Yes. A single syllable, offering nothing. Talon stared at the ceiling. We need to talk, Laurel. About us. About whatever's going on with you. She didn't move. There's nothing going on, Talon. I'm tired, that's all. Bullshit. The word hung between them. You've been tired for months. You don't look at me anymore. You barely touch me. Something's happening, and I deserve to know what. Laurel sat up suddenly, turning on the bedside lamp. In the harsh light, her face looked hollow. Beautiful still, but distant. Like she was already gone. You want to know what's wrong? Fine. I'm suffocating here. This house, this town, this life, it's all so small. Her voice trembled. I had dreams, Talon. Before you, before Jace. And now I'm just stuck. The words cut deeper than any knife. You're saying your family is a prison? I'm saying I made choices too young, she whispered. Choices I can't undo. Talon felt cold rage building in his chest. Jace isn't a choice you can undo. I didn't mean. Yes, you did. He stood up, grabbing his pillow. I'll sleep on the couch. Talon, wait. But he was already closing the door behind him, shutting out her voice and the marriage that was crumbling like sand between his fingers. The next morning, breakfast was a silent affair until Laurel suddenly spoke up. I was thinking we could go for a hike today, she said, her voice unnaturally bright. As a family. Mom's never seen Wolf Pine Trail, and the weather's perfect. Talon looked up from his coffee, surprise written across his face. You hate hiking? People change, she said with a shrug. Besides, it would be good for Jace to get outside. And Mom wants to see more of Oregon's natural beauty. Eloise nodded, though hiking in her designer clothes seemed unlikely. I've heard the views are spectacular. Something fell off, but Talon couldn't place it. And seeing the hope in Jace's eyes, the boy loved their rare family outings, he found himself nodding. Sure, we can head out after lunch. Great. Laurel's smile seemed genuine for once. I'll pack some snacks. As she bustled around the kitchen with unusual energy, Talon caught Jace watching his mother with the same puzzled expression Talon felt on his own face. When their eyes met, a silent understanding passed between father and son. Something wasn't right, but neither could say exactly what. The Wolf Pine Trail wound through dense forest before climbing to a rocky overlook with views of the entire valley. Talon had hiked it dozens of times, sometimes alone, sometimes with Jace perched on his shoulders. Never with Laurel, who preferred the comforts of town, and certainly never with Eloise, who now picked her way along the path in hiking boots that looked brand new. How much farther? Eloise asked, her breath coming in short gasps. About half a mile to the lookout, Talon answered, adjusting the small backpack he carried with water and snacks. Jace ran ahead, then back, a boundless ball of energy exploring every rock and tree. Dad, look at this bug. It has pincers. Talon crouched beside his son. That's a stag beetle, buddy. See how the pincers look like antlers? That's why they call it that. Cool. Jace's face lit up with the simple joy of discovery. Jace, don't get your clothes dirty, Laurel called out. And don't go too far ahead. Talon bit back a retort. Boys were supposed to get dirty. That was the point of childhood. But he didn't want another fight. Not here. Not with Jace watching. They continued upward, the path growing steeper. Laurel walked behind Talon, with Eloise bringing up the rear. The forest thinned as they approached the summit, trees giving way to scrubby bushes and then bare rock. Almost there, Talon called back. The view's worth it, I promise. The lookout was a flat expanse of rock jutting out from the mountainside. A sheer drop of several hundred feet fell away to the forest below. No guardrails, no safety measures, just nature, raw and unforgiving. Talon had always respected that honesty. "Stay back from the edge, Jace," he warned as they reached the clearing. "The stone can be loose near the lip." Jace nodded solemnly. The boy had healthy caution, something Talon had instilled in him early. Respect nature, but don't fear it. Talon walked toward the edge, keeping a safe distance, but wanted to show Jace the eagle's nest on a ledge below that they'd spotted on their last visit. The view was magnificent, miles of green forest stretching to the blue-hazed mountains in the distance. This was why he loved Oregon. The wildness of it. The freedom. "Come look, Jace," he called. "You can see the hole." A sharp blow struck him between the shoulder blades. Before he could register what was happening, another push sent him stumbling forward. His boots slid on loose gravel. The world tilted. He heard Jace scream. Then he was falling. Time slowed as his body tumbled through open air. Combat instincts flared. "Tuck, protect your head, prepare for impact." He glimpsed the sky, the cliff face, then forest rushing up to meet him. The impact drove the air from his lungs. Pain exploded through his body as he crashed through branches, bounced off a ledge, and finally slammed into the ground. Something in his chest cracked. His left leg twisted at an impossible angle. Through a haze of pain, he heard another crash nearby. Smaller, lighter. "Jace!" Horror cut through the shock. Talon tried to move, to call out, but his body wouldn't respond. Blood trickled into his eyes from a gash on his forehead. The world swam in and out of focus. "Dad!" The whisper came from a few yards away. Talon turned his head, gritting his teeth against the pain that lanced through his neck. Jace lay crumpled against a fallen log, his arm bent wrongly. But his eyes were open. Alert! "Don't move yet," Jace whispered, so faintly Talon barely heard him. "They're still up there." Talon's mind struggled to comprehend. "They? Who's they?" Then he heard Laurel's voice floating down from above. "Can you see them?" "No." Eloise's voice. "But that fall. They'll find the bodies by morning." "Are you sure?" Laurel sounded strained. "What if?" "It's done." Eloise cut her off. "Make sure the insurance clears before you leave." "Insurance. Bodies." The words penetrated Talon's shock like bullets. This was no accident. Laurel had pushed him. Eloise had pushed Jace. They had tried to kill them. Rage surged through Talon's broken body, but training kept him still. Play dead. Assess. Survive. The Marine Corps had drilled those priorities into him, and they surfaced now, overriding even the betrayal cutting through his heart. He heard their footsteps retreating from the cliff edge. Only when the sounds had completely faded did he allow himself to move. "Jace," he gasped, "are you hurt badly?" His son's face was pale, tear-streaked, but his eyes were clear. "My arm hurts. And my leg. Did Mom push me?" The question threatened to break Talon completely. How do you tell a 6-year-old that his mother tried to murder him? "I think so, buddy," he said finally, choosing truth over comfort. "Jace deserved that much. Do you understand what happened up there?" Jace nodded, his small face suddenly much older. "Mom and Grandma try to hurt us. They want us to die." His voice trembled but didn't break. "They said something about insurance. Smart kid. Too smart, maybe, to be carrying this knowledge." "We need to move," Talon said, forcing himself to focus on survival. "Can you stand?" Talon's own inventory was grim. Broken ribs for sure, possibly a collapsed lung from the way breathing felt like fire. His left leg was definitely broken. He could see bone pressing against the skin just below his knee. Concussion likely from the double vision that came and went, but he was alive. And so was Jace. That meant Laurel and Eloise had failed, and they would live to regret that failure. Talon dragged himself to a sitting position, each movement sending shards of agony through his chest. He needed to assess Jace's injuries before they moved. "Come here, buddy." Slowly, Jace crawled over, whimpering when he put weight on his right arm. "Let me see." Talon gently examined his son. The arm was broken, a simple fracture that hadn't broken the skin. Relief flooded him bad, but not critical. Jace had scrapes and bruises everywhere, including a nasty cut on his scalp that bled freely, but head wounds always looked worse than they were. His right ankle was swollen, but not deformed, better than Talon had dared hope. "We need to make a splint for your arm," he told Jace. "And then we have to get moving before it gets dark." "Are we going to the hospital?" Jace asked. Talon hesitated. The smart play would be getting immediate medical attention, but his gut told him that wasn't safe. If Laurel and Eloise had planned this, and the conversation he'd overheard suggested, then hospitals would be the first place they'd check if they suspected survivors. Not yet, Talon decided. First, we need to find shelter. He remembered an old ranger cabin about 2 miles downhill, used seasonally by the Forestry Service. If they could reach it, they'd have basic supplies and shelter for the night. Time to think. Using a fallen branch as a makeshift crutch, Talon struggled to his feet. The world tilted dangerously, and he had to fight to stay conscious. Once upright, he fashioned a rough splint for Jace's arm using sticks and strips torn from his own shirt. "This will hurt," he warned before setting the bone as best he could. Jace bit his lip to keep from crying out, tears streaming down his face. "I'm sorry," Talon whispered, hating himself for causing his son more pain. "You're being so brave." Night was falling by the time they began their slow journey down the mountainside. Talon leaned heavily on his branch, dragging his broken leg behind him. Jace stayed close, occasionally helping to steady him when the ground grew treacherous. Every step was agony, but Talon pushed the pain away, compartmentalizing it as he'd been trained to do. Blood soaked through his jeans where bone had pierced skin. His ribs screamed with each breath. But worse than the physical pain was the knowledge of Laurel's betrayal. His wife, the mother of his child, had tried to murder them both. For money? For freedom? The reasons didn't matter. The betrayal was absolute. They paused frequently for rest, Talon growing weaker with each step. By the time the cabin came into view, a dark shadow against the deeper darkness of the forest, he was barely conscious, moving on will alone. "There it is," he gasped. "Just a little further." The last 100 yards nearly broke him. When they finally reached the cabin door, Talon collapsed against it, fumbling with the handle. Locked. Of course it was locked. "Step back," he told Jace, then rammed his shoulder against the door with the last of his strength. The lock gave way with a splintering crack, and they stumbled inside. Emergency supplies lined one wall, standard forestry kit. First aid, emergency rations, bottled water, blankets, and, most importantly, a radio. "Let me get you fixed up first," Talon said, guiding Jace to a cot in the corner. He cleaned and bandaged his son's wounds, gave him water and pain relievers from the first aid kit, then wrapped him in a blanket. "Try to rest," he told Jace, brushing the hair from his forehead. "I need to make a call." Jace caught his hand. "Are we going to tell the police what Mom did?" The question struck at the heart of the decision Talon had been wrestling with since the fall. The obvious answer was yes. Attempted murder. Let the justice system handle it. But something deeper, something darker, had taken root in Talon's soul. This wasn't just about justice. This was personal, betrayal at the most intimate level. "No," he said finally. "Not the police." He limped to the radio and punched in a frequency he hadn't used in years. A frequency from another life. After 3 bursts of static, a gruff voice answered. "This is an emergency channel. Identify." "Briar, it's Talon." His voice sounded strange to his own ears, ragged with pain and something else. Something cold. "Black Dog and Snowfall." I repeat, Black Dog and Snowfall. The recognition code from their deployment days. A signal for life or death situations, no questions asked without a pause. Then location, Ranger Cabin 16, Wolf Pine Sector. North Oregon Forest Service Grid. Talon's vision was starting to tunnel. Blood loss. Shock. He wouldn't stay conscious much longer. Need immediate evac. Medical. Bring basics. Roger. ETA, 6 hours. Hang tight. Talon slumped against the wall as the connection went dead. 6 hours. They could make it 6 hours that he dragged himself back to the cot, where Jace had finally fallen into exhausted sleep. His son's face was pale, drawn with pain even in unconsciousness. Something twisted in Talon's chest that had nothing to do with his broken ribs. Laurel and Eloise had tried to kill this innocent boy. His BOY in that moment. Something inside Talon Mercer changed irrevocably. The part of him that believed in second chances, in forgiveness, in the system had died, as surely as Laurel had intended him to die on those rocks. Using the last of his strength, he pulled himself to the small wood stove in the center of the cabin and lit a fire. Then he took the radio and fed it to the flames. No evidence. No official record of survivors. Darkness claimed him. One thought crystallized in his mind. He wasn't going to seek justice. He was going to war. Talon awoke to the sound of hushed voices and the sharp smell of antiseptic. His body felt simultaneously numb and on fire. He tried to move and immediately regretted it. "Easy, brother." A familiar voice. "Briar, you're pretty banged up." Talon forced his eyes open. He was still in the ranger cabin, lying on the cot where he'd collapsed. Dawnlight filtered through dusty windows. Briar Easton crouched beside him, looking exactly as Talon remembered, broad-shouldered, with a thick beard and the haunted eyes of someone who'd seen too much war. "Jace," Talon croaked. "Your boy's okay." Briar nodded toward the other side of the cabin. "Sleeping now. I gave him something for the pain. Set his arm properly, too." Talon turned his head carefully. Jace lay bundled in blankets on a makeshift pallet, his splinted arm resting on his chest. Relief washed over Talon. "And me? What's the damage?" "3 broken ribs. 1 punctured your left lung. Compound fracture of the tibia. Moderate concussion. Internal bleeding I managed to slow down." Briar's voice was clinical, the combat medic taking over. "I've stabilized you, but you need a hospital, Talon." "No hospitals." Talon's voice hardened. "No official records." Briar studied him for a long moment. "Want to tell me what happened? Only reason for going dark like this is if someone's hunting you." Talon closed his eyes, the memory of Laurel's betrayal burning like acid in his chest. "My wife pushed me off a cliff. Her mother pushed Jace. They think we're dead, and I want to keep it that way for now." Briar's expression didn't change a testament to the things he'd seen in their years together in Iraq. "Insurance scam?" "Caught enough of their conversation to think so," Talon confirmed. "But there's more to it. Has to be. What's your play?" "First, we disappear. Then we figure out why they did it." Talon's hand fisted in the blanket. "Then they pay." Briar didn't lecture him about going to the authorities. Didn't suggest forgiveness or taking the high road. He just nodded, soldier to soldier. "I got a place," he said. "Off-grid cabin about 3 hours north, just over the Washington border. No paper trail. I use it when the PTSD gets bad." Talon knew about Briar's struggles after their third tour. The nightmares, the hypervigilance, the darkness that sometimes swallowed him whole. They kept in touch over the years, checking in when demons got too loud. "We need supplies," Talon said, struggling to think clearly through the pain. "And my leg needs proper setting. Already handled the leg best I could. Brought supplies to last a week." Briar stood up. "But we need to move soon. Your boy needs real rest, and you need better medical attention than I can give you here." Talon nodded, then winced as the movement sent pain lancing through his skull. "How'd you find us?" "You gave coordinates, remember? Drove most of the way, hiked the last mile." Briar's face softened slightly. "The kid was standing guard when I got here, holding a stick like it was a rifle. Wouldn't let me near you until I showed him my Marine Corps tattoo. Said you told him to trust the eagle, globe, and anchor." Something tight formed in Talon's throat. He'd taught Jace about his military days, showed him the symbols, told him stories, sanitized versions of brotherhood and honor. The boy had remembered, had protected him when he couldn't protect himself. "You shouldn't have to be this strong," Talon whispered. "But he is," Briar replied simply, like his old man. Over the next hour, Briar helped Talon eat and drink, changed the dressings on his worst wounds, and gave him antibiotics from a stash that Talon knew better than to ask about. By mid-morning, Jace was awake too, quiet but alert. "We're going on a trip with Mr. Briar," Talon explained as the boy ate some trail mix. "To a special hideout." "Because of Mom?" Jace asked, his eyes too old for his face. "Yes, buddy. We need to stay hidden for a while. Are we ever going home? The question hit Talon like a physical blow. Home. The house he'd built with his own hands. The workshop where he'd taught Jace to use tools. The yard where they played catch and built snowmen. All of it poisoned now. I don't think so, he answered honestly. But home isn't just a place, Jace. It's the people you trust. You and me were home now. Jace thought about this, then nodded with the simple acceptance of childhood. Okay. By noon, they were ready to move. Briar carried Jace to an old Jeep hidden a quarter-mile away. Then he returned for Talon, supporting most of his weight as they struggled through the forest. The pain was blinding, but Talon refused any stronger painkillers. He needed his mind cleared as they drove north, taking back roads and avoiding highways. Talon stared out the window at the passing landscape. The forests and mountains of Oregon had been his sanctuary since he'd left the Marines. The place he'd chosen to build a life after too many years of destruction. Now those same forests concealed the greatest betrayal he'd ever known. You're thinking about your father, Briar said suddenly, breaking the silence. Talon glanced at him sharply. How'd you know? Because I knew you back then. When the news came, Briar kept his eyes on the road. History's repeating on you. He wasn't wrong. Talon's mind had indeed drifted to his father, a good man destroyed by a business partner he trusted. His father's sudden accident had been ruled a suicide officially, but Talon had never believed it. Neither had his mother, whose grief had spiraled into a breakdown that landed her in an institution where she remained to this day, T-17. Talon had been left alone, forced to claw his way through the world with nothing but his own strength and determination. The Marines had given him purpose and brotherhood. Then Laurel had given him hope for something more. And now history was indeed repeating itself. One in the same way, Talon said, his voice hard. Not this time. Briar nodded. I know. That's why I answered when you called. In the back seat, Jace had fallen asleep again, his small body curled protectively around his injured arm. Looking at him, Talon felt a surge of resolve that pushed back the pain and exhaustion. Laurel might have taken their home, their security, even their past. But she wouldn't take their future. The cabin was exactly as Briar had described, isolated, rustic, surrounded by towering pines that shielded it from view. Inside was spare but functional. 2 bedrooms, a modest kitchen, a living area centered around a wood stove. Solar panels provided basic electricity and a well-supplied water. No one knows about this place except me, Briar said as he helped Talon onto a bed. Not even a VA docs. You can stay as long as you need. Over the next week, Talon's body began the slow process of healing. Briar stayed, changing bandages, monitoring for infection, feeding them with supplies he brought in under cover of darkness. Jace's resilience amazed Talon. The boy adapted to their new circumstances with a quiet determination that belied his 6 years at T-night. When Jace was asleep, Talon and Briar would sit by the fire, planning. They needed information. They needed resources. Most of all, they needed to understand what had really happened. First step is finding out if they're looking for bodies, Briar said one night, 9 days after the fall. I'll drive into town tomorrow, check the local news, see if there's been a search. If Laurel followed the plan, she'll have reported us missing by now, Talon agreed, probably claiming we went hiking without her. The thought of Laurel playing the grieving widow made his stomach turn. Had any of it been real? The years together, the life they'd built? What about your mom? Briar asked quietly. Should we let her know you're alive? Talon shook his head. The doctors say she barely recognizes visitors anymore. And if Laurel or Eloise suspected she knew something, he couldn't finish the sentence. The next day, Briar returned from town with newspapers and a burner laptop. They found your truck at the trailhead, he reported. Search and rescue went out 3 days ago, but found nothing. They're calling it a tragic hiking accident, father and son missing, presumed dead. He handed Talon a newspaper. There on the front page was Laurel, teary-eyed, being comforted by Eloise outside the Crescent Valley Sheriff's Office. The headline read, Local businessman and son missing after hike. She's good, Talon said, his voice hollow. I'll give her that. Jace peered at the paper from his spot at the table where he'd been drawing. Mom's pretending to be sad. Talon looked at his son, torn between protecting him and respecting his intelligence. Yes, she is. Why did she do it, Dad? The question Talon had been dreading. Why did Mom try to hurt us? Talon sat beside him, choosing his words carefully. I think your mom made some bad choices, Jace. I think she wanted a different life, and someone convinced her this was the way to get it. Grandma? Probably. But we don't know everything yet. Talon put his arm around Jace's thin shoulders. That's what we're going to find out. Jace leaned against him. And then what? Talon exchanged a look with Briar before answering. Then we make sure they can't hurt anyone else. It was as much as he could say without burdening his son with the darkness growing inside him, the cold, patient hunger for retribution that sustained him through the pain of recovery. That'd be why the third week, Talon could move around with crutches. His ribs still ached with every breath, but the punctured lung had healed enough that he no longer feared it collapsing. The leg would take months to fully heal, but he'd endured worse injuries in combat. That it was time to start gathering intelligence. I need someone in Crescent Valley, he told Briar. Someone who can watch Laurel without being noticed. Someone who knows how to stay invisible. Briar considered this. I might know someone. Owes me from way back. Used to do some off-books work for a private security firm in Portland. Can you trust them? More importantly, can you? Talon smiled grimly. Only 3 people in the world I trust right now. You, me, and the kid. Fair enough. Briar stood up. But we need eyes and ears down there. I'll make contact, see if they're interested. 2 days later, Hazel Lynn arrived at the cabin, tattooed and sharp-eyed. With a shock of blue-black hair and a face that revealed nothing, she assessed Talon with a mechanic's precision, seeing the damage, calculating the repairs needed. Briar says you save his ass in Fallujah, she said by way of greeting. Says I should help you. I don't want charity. Talon replied that Hazel's laugh was short and harsh. Trust me, this isn't charity. I'm not the volunteering type. Then why are you here? Because I owe Briar my life. Her voice was matter-of-fact. And because I hate people who prey on their own families. My father was that type. Left my mother bleeding on the kitchen floor when I was 9. Understanding passed between them. And she got a gun and made sure he never came back. Hazel's smile was cold. I helped her clean up. Talon nodded slowly. This was the kind of ally he needed, someone who understood that some betrayals couldn't be forgiven. Some debts could only be paid in full. I need to know what my wife is doing, he said. Who she's seeing. Where the money's going. Consider it done. Hazel turned to leave, then paused at the door. One rule, the kid doesn't get hurt by whatever you're planning. I won't be part of that. Jace is the reason I'm still breathing, Talon replied. Everything I do is to secure his future. Hazel studied him, then nodded. I'll be in touch. As the door closed behind her, Briar raised an eyebrow. You sure about this? No, Talon admitted. But we need help, and she has the right kind of anger. Just remember, revenge is a cold companion in the long nights, Briar said quietly. I've seen what it does to men, how it hollows them out. Talon looked at Jace, who was sleeping peacefully for the first time in days. This isn't about revenge. It's about justice, and making sure my son has a future. But in the deepest part of himself, Talon knew that wasn't entirely true. The desire to make Laurel and Eloise suffer burned in him like a fever. It kept him going through the pain, through the long hours of therapy to strengthen his damaged body, through the nightmares that jolted him awake in cold sweats, in oh mercy. No forgiveness. The mantra repeated in his mind, a driving rhythm that pushed everything else aside. 1 month after the fall, Laurel and Eloise stood side by side at the Crescent Valley Memorial Gardens. The small crowd gathered around the empty graves, one large. One small watched as Laurel placed white roses on the polished stones that bore Talon's and Jace's names. What they couldn't see was Hazel, disguised in funeral black and oversized sunglasses, recording everything from the edge of the gathering. Later that day, Talon watched the video on Briar's laptop, his face impassive as Laurel dabbed at dry eyes with a tissue. She's playing the part well, he commented, pausing the video on a close-up of her face. But look at her eyes. Nothing there. Briar leaned in. Eloise is doing most of the talking, keeping Laurel close. Controlling her, Talon agreed. There's something off about their dynamic. He resumed the video, watching as various townspeople offered condolences. Most he recognized neighbors, clients from his shop, Jace's teacher. Then the camera caught a man Talon didn't know, tall, expensively dressed, with the confident bearing of someone used to authority. "Who's that?" he asked, freezing the frame. "Don't know," Briar admitted. "Hazel might." As if on cue, Talon's burner phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Funeral complete. Target returning home with mother. New development. Male presence at house. Will surveil and report. Talon showed Briar the message. "She's thorough. Professional," Briar corrected. "Different thing." Over the next week, Hazel's reports painted a concerning picture. The unknown man, identified as Reese Kincaid, 42, hedge fund manager from Portland, was a frequent visitor to the house. Laurel seemed deferential around him, while Eloise treated him as an equal. Meanwhile, Laurel had begun the process of claiming Talon's life insurance policy he'd taken out years ago that would pay nearly $2 million. "Follow the money," Talon instructed Hazel during one of their encrypted calls. "I want to know how it's all connected." "Already on it," she replied. "Your mother-in-law's financial history is interesting. Her husband died 10 years ago, right?" "Yes. Boating accident, from what Laurel told me. I never met him." "Well, I dug into the old newspaper archives. The investigation had some inconsistencies, but it was eventually ruled accidental. His life insurance paid out $5 million. Talon absorbed this. "You think Eloise has done this before?" "I think it's worth looking into," Hazel said carefully. "People who get away with murder once often try again." That night, unable to sleep, Talon sat on the cabin's small porch, staring into the darkness. Briar joined him, offering a beer that Talon declined. He needed clarity more than comfort. "What's on your mind?" Briar asked. "Laurel's sister," Talon replied. "She died before I met Laurel. Car accident when they were teenagers. Laurel never talked about it much, but now you're wondering if it was really an accident." Talon nodded. "Eloise said something at the cliff. I didn't catch all of it, but it sounded like she was threatening Laurel with something about her sister." Briar took a long pull of his beer. "You think Laurel was involved in her sister's death?" "I think Eloise might be using it to control her," Talon said slowly. "Which means Laurel might not be the mastermind here. Does that change anything for you?" Talon considered the question. Did it matter if Laurel was being manipulated? She'd still push him off that cliff. Still tried to murder their son. "No," he said finally. "It doesn't change what she did, but it might change how we approach this." 2 days later, Hazel sent a file containing old police reports she'd somehow obtained about the death of Meredith Varner, Laurel's sister. The official ruling had been driver error. The 16-year-old Meredith had taken a curve too fast on a rainy night, lost control, and crashed into a ravine. Laurel, 15 at the time, had been the only witness, but buried in the witness statements was a disturbing note. The investigating officer had written that Laurel seemed unusually composed, and her account of the crash had minor inconsistencies that he attributed to shock. "This doesn't prove anything," Briar cautioned as they reviewed the files. "No, but it's a thread," Talon replied, "and I want to pull it." Meanwhile, Jace was adapting to their new reality with remarkable resilience. Briar had brought books and art supplies. Talon, despite his injuries, took him for short walks in the woods, teaching him about tracking and survival skills that now seemed more relevant than ever. But at night, the boy still cried in his sleep. Sometimes he called for his mother, and those were the moments that tore at Talon's heart. Despite everything, some part of Jace still loved and missed the mother who had tried to kill him. "Is Jace going to be okay?" Talon asked Briar one night after another nightmare had woken the boy. Briar thought before answering. "Kids are resilient, but he needs stability, routine, and eventually he'll need answers that make sense to him." "What kind of answer makes sense of a mother trying to kill her child?" "None," Briar admitted. "But you'll need to give him something, a future he can believe in." 2 months after the fall, Talon's physical recovery had progressed enough that he could move without crutches, though he still limped heavily. His body was healing, but the betrayal remained an open wound that Hazel's intelligence gathering had accelerated. Using contacts from her security days, She had placed surveillance on not just Laurel, but also Eloise and Reese Kincaid. A picture was emerging, one of financial entanglement, secret meetings, and mounting tension between the conspirators. Eloise and Reese are definitely in business together, Hazel reported during her weekly visit to the cabin. His hedge fund manages her wealth, but there's more to it. They're planning something big, some kind of investment that requires significant capital. The insurance money, Talon guessed. Probably. But there's something else. Hazel hesitated. Laurel's cracking. I've observed her having panic attacks when alone, drinking heavily. She keeps checking the trails around your property, like she's afraid of something. Or someone, Breyer suggested. Talon felt a grim satisfaction. Good. Let her be afraid. Let her imagine him coming back from the dead. There's more, Hazel continued. I overheard an argument between Laurel and Eloise. Eloise said, and I quote, "You leave now, and I tell them what you did to your sister." Laurel completely broke down after that. The words confirmed Talon's suspicions about Meredith's death. So Eloise is using Laurel's past to control her. Looks that way, Hazel agreed. But Laurel's not an innocent victim here. She's still trying to collect your life insurance. Still sleeping with Reese Kincaid while playing the grieving widow for the neighbors. The image of Laurel with another man sent a fresh wave of anger through Talon. Not jealousy, that emotion required love, and whatever he'd felt for Laurel had died on those rocks. This was the raw fury of betrayal compounded. We need to apply pressure, he decided. Make them turn on each other. How do you want to do that? Breyer asked. Talon thought for a moment. Hazel, can you create a paper trail suggesting that Reese is planning to cut Eloise out of whatever deal they're working on? Hazel smiled, a predator's grin. Already have most of the pieces. I can plant the rest. Do it, Talon ordered. And let's see how loyal their little conspiracy really is. The plan worked better than Talon could have hoped. Within a week, Hazel reported increasing tension between Eloise and Reese. Heated phone calls, terse meetings, suspicious glances. The artificial trust between predators was fracturing, but it was Laurel who provided the most satisfying reaction. According to Hazel, she had become increasingly paranoid, jumping at shadows, checking locks repeatedly. She'd even visited the cliff where Talon and Jace had supposedly died, standing at the edge for nearly an hour in the rain. She's afraid, Hazel reported with grim satisfaction. She thinks you might be alive. She's right, Talon said. And soon, she'll know just how right she is. 3 months after the fall, Talon stood in front of a mirror in the cabin bathroom, examining his changed appearance. The well-groomed business owner was gone, replaced by a harder, leaner man. His beard was full now, his hair longer. New scars marked his face where rocks had torn his skin during the fall. His eyes were what had changed the most: cold, watchful, unforgiving. Jace appeared in the doorway, watching him. You look different, Dad. Talon turned to his son. Do I scare you? Jace shook his head. No, you look like a warrior now, like in your Marine stories. I guess I am at war again, Talon admitted, crouching to meet his son at eye level. But not like before. This time, it's just for us. To make us safe. Are you going to hurt Mom? The question was direct, unfiltered by adult pretense. Talon didn't lie. I'm going to make sure she never hurts you again. Or anyone else. Jace considered this, then nodded. Okay. Such simple acceptance from a child who'd seen too much, too young. It strengthened Talon's resolve. That night, he outlined the next phase of his plan to Breyer and Hazel. It was time to move from surveillance to action. Time to let Laurel know that death hadn't claimed her husband and son after all. Are you sure about this? Breyer asked. Once you cross this line, there's no going back. I crossed that line when I decided not to go to the police, Talon replied. When I chose justice over law. Hazel nodded in understanding. Sometimes the system isn't equipped to handle certain kinds of evil. Sometimes you have to go outside it. Just remember what you're fighting for, Breyer cautioned. Revenge can consume you until there's nothing left. Talon glanced toward the bedroom where Jace slept peacefully. I know exactly what I'm fighting for, and I won't lose sight of it. The next day, while Laurel was shopping in town and Eloise was meeting with Reese in Portland, Hazel broke into the Varner estate. Following Talon's instructions, she didn't take anything of value. Instead, she left 2 items in Laurel's bedroom: Jace's drawing of their family, which he'd made the day before the hike, and his favorite toy dinosaur, smeared with what appeared to be blood. The message was clear: we're not dead. We know what you did. We're coming. Talon sat in Hazel's nondescript sedan, parked half a block from his former home. Through binoculars, he watched Laurel's return from town, the casual way she carried her shopping bags inside, unaware that her carefully constructed illusion was about to shatter. "Are you sure you want to watch this?" Hazel asked from the driver's seat. "I could record it instead. I need to see her face," Talon replied, not lowering the binoculars. "Need to know if any part of her actually regrets what she did." They didn't have to wait long. Laurel's scream was audible even through closed windows. She burst from the house moments later, phone clutched to her ear, face drained of color. Talon watched as she paced the driveway, gesticulating wildly as she spoke presumably to Eloise. "Guess she found our little gifts." Hazel commented dryly that Laurel's panic was palpable even from a distance. She kept looking around, scanning the street, the trees, as if expecting Talon to materialize from thin air. Her composed widow's mask had cracked completely. "Good," Talon murmured. "Let her feel what Jace felt. The terror of betrayal." Eloise's black Mercedes screeched into the driveway an hour later. The older woman strode inside, her usual regal bearing replaced by urgent purpose. Through the front windows, Talon could see them arguing, Laurel near hysteria, Eloise cold and commanding. "They'll call the police," Hazel predicted. "No, they won't," Talon countered. "Not if Eloise is as smart as I think she is. Police means questions about the supposed accident, about insurance claims already in progress, about Reese and whatever they're planning." He was right. No patrol cars arrived. Instead, after another hour, a different vehicle pulled up, an unmarked black SUV with tinted windows. A man Talon had never seen before emerged, carrying what looked like security equipment. "Professional help," Hazel noted. "Private, not police." They watched as the man installed what appeared to be additional security cameras around the property. Meanwhile, Laurel remained inside, visible occasionally through windows, pacing and drinking steadily from a glass that she kept refilling. "She's unraveling," Talon observed with cold satisfaction. Time to push harder. The next phase of his plan involved Reese Kincaid. Thanks to Hazel's intelligence, they knew that Reese was the linchpin connecting Eloise's old money to new investments, potentially illegal ones, based on the secrecy surrounding their dealings. More importantly, they knew he was Laurel's true loyalty. "You really think they were lovers before?" Breyer asked when Talon explained his theory back at the cabin. "It fits," Talon replied. Laurel grew distant around the same time Eloise started visiting more frequently. Reese is their connection. I think Laurel knew him before we met, maybe even before her sister died. Hazel nodded. I did some digging. Reese was at the same private school as Laurel and Meredith, 2 years ahead of them. Could be they have history. History that Eloise is using, Talon concluded. But if Reese is Laurel's weakness, then Laurel is his. We can use that. The plan they devised was elegant in its simplicity. Hazel, using her contacts and considerable hacking skills, created a paper trail suggesting that Laurel was secretly working with federal investigators. Fake emails, telephone records showing calls to FBI field offices, wire transfers that looked like payments to informants. All fiction, but convincing enough to plant doubts in the mind of someone already on edge. Plant it on Eloise's computer, Talon instructed. Make it look like Laurel is planning to take immunity in exchange for testifying against both Eloise and Reese. What about financial leverage? Hazel asked. I've been monitoring their accounts. There's a lot of money moving around. Follow it, Talon said. And when you find where it leads, see if you can redirect some. Not enough to notice immediately, but enough to cause friction when they do. As they implemented the plan, Talon focused on rebuilding his strength. His legs still ached in cold weather, and his ribs protested sharp movements, but he pushed through the pain. He needed to be ready for whatever came next. Jace, meanwhile, continued to adapt to their strange new life. Briar had begun homeschooling him, using materials Hazel brought from town. The boy's arm had healed well, though the emotional scars went deeper. He still had nightmares, still asked questions about his mother that Talon struggled to answer honestly without crushing what remained of Jace's innocence. Will we ever have a normal home again? Jace asked one night as Talon tucked him in. We will, Talon promised. Different than before, but better. Safer. With people we can trust. Like Briar and Hazel. Yes, like them. Jace seems satisfied with this. I like them. They're honest. Out of the mouths of babes, Talon thought. Honesty had become their most valuable currency in a world built on lies. 4 months after the fall, their strategy began yielding results. According to Hazel's surveillance, tensions between Eloise, Laurel, and Reese had escalated dramatically. Reese had stopped visiting the house, communicating with Eloise only through encrypted messages that Hazel nonetheless managed to intercept. Laurel had begun secretly packing essentials preparing to run. Most satisfying of all, Eloise had hired additional security. She was scared. They're falling apart, Hazel reported during one of their strategy sessions. But there's a complication. Eloise has hired a professional Kellamar. The name hit Talon like a bucket of ice water. You're sure? Hazel nodded. Positive. Former mercenary. Now works private security with a reputation for handling problems permanently. Eloise brought him in yesterday. Briar whistled low. Small world. You know him? Hazel asked, glancing between them. Iraq, 2007, Talon replied. Our units worked together on several operations. He was Force Recon. He turned to Briar. Remember that compound outside Basra? The intel that saved our entire platoon. That was Mar. Briar looked surprised. Never knew his name. Talon nodded grimly. It was him. He lost 3 of his men getting that intelligence to us. He turned back to Hazel. This changes things. Kellamar isn't just a hired gun. He's principled. In his way. You think you can flip him? Hazel asked skeptically. I think I can try, Talon replied. We have history. That counts for something in our world. The opportunity came sooner than expected. Hazel's surveillance revealed that Mar had established a pattern of nightly security checks around the Varner estate, including a 2 a.m. patrol of the perimeter that took him momentarily out of view of the house cameras. 3 nights later, Talon was waiting for him in the shadows of an old oak tree that overlooked the property's eastern fence. His heart pounded against his ribs, but his hands were steady as he watched Mar approach a tall figure moving with military precision through the darkness. Just before Mar passed beneath his position, Talon whispered a phrase he hadn't used in years, sandstorm at midnight. The recognition code from their joint operation in Basra. Mar froze, his hand moving to the weapon concealed beneath his jacket. Identify, he demanded quietly. Talon Mercer, Marine Corps, 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines. Talon kept his voice low. We met in Basra. You saved my unit with intel about insurgent movements. Mar's posture remained tense. Mercer is dead. Hiking accident. Not dead, Talon corrected. Betrayed. Pushed off a cliff by my wife and her mother. The same people who hired you. A long silence followed. Then, show yourself. Slowly, Talon descended from the tree, movements deliberate, hands visible. When he stepped into a patch of moonlight, Mar's eyes widened slightly, the only sign of surprise from the professional soldier. You look like hell, Mar commented. Falling off a cliff will do that, Talon replied dryly. Mar studied him, tactical mind visibly reassessing the situation. Your son, alive, safe, good. Mar nodded once. Eloise Varner hired me to eliminate a security threat. I'm guessing that's you. Likely. She didn't mention you might be a fellow Marine. Talon met his gaze steadily. Would it have mattered? Mar considered this. Yes, he said finally. It would have. He holstered his weapon. You saved me once. Pull me out of that collapsed building outside Ramadi. My debt's due. I'm not asking for favors, Talon said. Just the truth about what they're planning. Mar seemed to come to a decision. Eloise Varner is moving money, lots of it. She and her partner, Kincaid, have something big in the works. I don't know details, but it's happening soon. Your wife is nervous, increasingly unstable. Eloise wants you found and silenced before the insurance money clears, and they complete whatever deal they're working on. And you were hired to find me. Yes. Talon took a calculated risk. What if, instead, you help me take them down? All of them. Not by killing, that's too easy. By exposing everything they've built. Mar's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. Why should I? Because whatever they're doing isn't legal. Because they tried to murder a 6-year-old boy. Because when this falls apart, you don't want to be caught in the debris. A long moment passed as Mar weighed his options. Then he nodded. I want immunity from whatever fallout comes. And my name stays out of it. Done. Talon agreed immediately. Then tell me what you need. The first light of dawn filtered through the cabin windows as Talon outlined the final phase of his plan to Briar, Hazel, and their newest ally, Kellen Mar. Jace slept in the next room, unaware that the endgame was approaching. Reese Kincaid is the key, Talon explained, spreading surveillance photos across the table. He's the financial brain, the one laundering Eloise's money through offshore accounts and shell companies. Based on what I've found in Eloise's files, they're planning to use the insurance money from your death as the final investment in some kind of real estate development. Mar added, something that requires political connections to bypass environmental regulations. Hazel nodded. That tracks with the communications I've intercepted. They're bribing officials to rezone protected forest land for luxury housing. The profit potential is enormous. And completely illegal, Briar noted. Which gives us leverage, Talon said. Kellen, you'll continue as Eloise's security consultant, but you'll feed us information and help position Reese for the trap. What about Laurel? Hazel asked. Talon's jaw tightened. Leave her to me. The plan they formulated was multi-pronged. Hazel would hack Eloise's financial accounts, creating a trail that suggested Reese was skimming millions. Kellen would stage a fake FBI raid on Reese's office, complete with convincing but falsified federal documentation, making him believe he was under investigation. And Briar would ensure Jace remained safe during the operation, moving him to an even more secure location. Once Reese is rattled, he'll turn on Eloise, Talon predicted. He'll try to save himself by offering her up. That's when we spring the final trap. And Laurel? Briar asked quietly. I'll confront her personally, Talon replied, his voice flat. At the cliff, where it all began. The others exchanged glances but didn't argue. They recognized the cold determination in Talon's eyes. This was personal justice he needed to deliver himself. As they dispersed to implement their roles, Talon checked on Jace. The boy was awake, sitting up in bed, watching him with those two perceptive eyes. You're going to see Mom, aren't you? He asked. Talon sat on the edge of the bed. Yes. How did you know? Your face looks different. Like it did in the hospital when you told me about Grandpa dying. Sharp kid. Too sharp sometimes. I need to talk to her to understand why she did what she did. Jace considered this. She won't say sorry and mean it. Probably not, Talon agreed. But this isn't about forgiveness, Jace. It's about making sure she can't hurt anyone else. Will I ever see her again? The question pierced Talon's heart. Despite everything, some part of Jace still yearned for his mother. I don't know, buddy, he answered honestly. That might not be safe. Jace nodded, accepting this reality with a resilience that continued to amaze Talon. Just come back, okay? Promise. Cross my heart, Talon said, making their special gesture. Nothing will keep me from coming back to you. The plan unfolded with military precision over the next 72 hours. First, Hazel infiltrated Eloise's financial network, creating discrepancies that suggested millions had been diverted to accounts controlled solely by Reese. She ensured Eloise would discover these transfers at a critical moment. Meanwhile, Kellen arranged a meeting with Reese at an isolated vacation property, ostensibly to discuss security concerns. When Reese arrived, he found himself surrounded by Kellen and two associates posing as federal agents, complete with fake badges and warrants. Reese Kincaid, Kellen announced formally, you're under investigation for fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit murder. The FBI has been tracking your activities for months. Reese's face drained of color. This is absurd. I demand to call my lawyer. Go ahead, Kellen said, sliding him a phone. "But before you do, you should know that Eloise Varner has already been questioned. She's offering evidence against you in exchange for immunity." This was a lie, of course, but one calculated to shatter the trust between conspirators. Reese's expression confirmed their strategy was working. Panic, followed by calculation, then a cold resolve that Talon recognized as self-preservation. "Wait," Reese said, pushing away the phone. "I have information. About Eloise Varner. About her husband's death. About what really happened to her younger daughter." "We're listening," Kellen replied. By the time Reese finished his desperate confession, recorded by the hidden devices Kellen had planted, they had everything they needed. The hedge fund manager had implicated himself, Eloise, and Laurel in multiple crimes, including the murder of Eloise's husband and the accident that claimed Meredith Varner's life. "What happens now?" Reese asked when he'd finished, looking defeated. "Now you wait," Kellen told him. "Don't leave town. Don't contact Eloise or Laurel. If you cooperate fully, the prosecutor might consider leniency." It was another lie, but one that would keep Reese isolated and paranoid until the final phase was complete. When Kellen reported back to Talon, his expression was grim. "It's worse than we thought." According to Reese, Laurel was directly involved in her sister's death. Apparently, Meredith had threatened to expose Eloise's involvement in some financial fraud. Laurel tampered with the brakes on her car. At 16, Breyer looked skeptical. "Eloise put her up to it," Kellen clarified. "Has been controlling her with that knowledge ever since. Using her as a pawn in her schemes." Talon absorbed this information, feeling a complex mixture of emotions. Not compassion for Laurel that had died on the cliffside, but a deeper understanding of the web of manipulation she'd been caught in. It didn't excuse her betrayal, but it contextualized it. "Does that change your plans?" Hazel asked him. "No," Talon replied, "but it confirms what I suspected. Eloise is the spider at the center of this web. She's destroyed everyone she's touched, her husband, her daughters, and now she tried to destroy me and my son." "So what's next?" Breyer asked. "I confront Laurel," Talon said. "Tomorrow, at the cliff. Kellen will ensure Eloise is occupied elsewhere, and Hazel will disable the security systems to get me in and out undetected." "And after?" Breyer pressed. Talon met his friend's concerned gaze. "After we end this, once and for all." That night, Talon sat alone on the cabin porch, cleaning the service pistol he'd carried through 3 tours in Iraq. The familiar ritual calmed his mind as he prepared for the confrontation ahead. Breyer joined him, wordlessly offering a cup of coffee, which Talon accepted with a nod. "You're not planning to use that on her, are you?" Breyer asked, nodding toward the weapon. "No," Talon replied honestly. "This is for protection, not vengeance. When Laurel sees me alive, there's no telling how she'll react." "What are you hoping to get from her?" Talon considered the question. "Closure, maybe. Understanding. And a recorded confession that we can use against her and Eloise. And if she won't give it, she will," Talon said with cold certainty. Fear is a powerful motivator. The next morning dawned gray and misty, matching Talon's mood as he prepared to face his wife for the first time since she tried to kill him. He dressed in nondescript dark clothing, tucked the pistol into a shoulder holster concealed beneath his jacket, and checked the recording device Hazel had provided. "Remember," Breyer cautioned as Talon prepared to leave, "stay focused on what matters. Getting justice, protecting Jace, building a future. Don't get lost in the past." Talon nodded, then crouched to embrace his son. "I'll be back soon, buddy. Stay with Uncle Breyer, okay? Be careful," Jace whispered, clinging tightly to him. "Mom might try to push you again." "Not this time," Talon promised. "This time, I'm ready for her." The Wolf Pine Trail hadn't changed. Same towering pines, same carpet of needles underfoot, same bird calls echoing through the canopy. But Talon had changed. As he hiked toward the cliff, he moved with careful precision, mindful of his still healing body, but propelled by purpose. According to Kellen, Laurel had been visiting the cliff regularly since receiving Talon's message months ago. Today would be no different. Kellen had ensured it by mentioning to Eloise that hikers had reported strange activity near the accident site, knowing she would demand Laurel check it out. Talon reached the overlook an hour before Laurel was expected, using the time to secure his position and prepare mentally. He found a sheltered spot among the rocks where he could observe without being seen. The wait wasn't long. Just after noon, he heard footsteps on the trail. Laurel appeared, moving tentatively along the path, looking thin and haunted. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her once immaculate appearance had grown careless hair pulled back hastily, clothes wrinkled. She approached the cliff edge slowly, stopping several feet back, fear of heights or fear of memory. Talon watched as she hugged herself, staring out at the view that had been the last thing he'd seen before falling. For a moment, he simply observed her, this woman he'd once loved, the mother of his child, the architect of his near death. Emotions warred within him: rage, grief, disgust, and underneath it all, a terrible sense of waste. So much destroyed for money and secrets that he stepped from his hiding place. "Hello, Laurel." She whirled around, a scream dying in her throat as she saw him. Her face drained of color, eyes widening in pure terror. She stumbled backward, dangerously close to the cliff edge. "Stay back," Talon warned sharply. "I didn't come to hurt you." Laurel stared at him as if seeing a ghost. In a way, she was. "You're dead," she whispered. "You're dead. I saw you fall. You pushed me," Talon corrected, his voice calm despite the storm inside him. "You pushed me, and Eloise pushed our son. But we survived." Jace, hope and horror mingled in her voice. "He's alive too. No thanks to you." Talon took a controlled step forward. "He was 6 years old, Laurel. Our son, and you tried to kill him." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I didn't want to. You have to believe me. Mom said it was the only way that we'd both be free afterward. That Jace would just fall asleep. That would be quick." The casual cruelty of it nearly broke Talon's control. Free from what? From us? From the family we built? From her control? Laurel cried. From the hold she has over me, over everything. "You don't understand what she's capable of." "I think I do," Talon replied coldly. "I know about your sister, Laurel. About what really happened to her." Laurel's knees seemed to give out. She sank to the ground, face crumpling. "Who told you? Does it matter? I know Eloise convinced you to tamper with Meredith's brakes. I know she's been using that against you ever since. But that doesn't excuse what you did to us." "No," Laurel whispered, "it doesn't. But you don't know what it's like to live with that kind of guilt, that kind of fear. To have someone who knows your darkest secret and can expose you anytime. So instead of facing consequences, you decided we needed to die." Talon's voice hardened. "For insurance money? For your freedom? For Reese," she admitted, the truth finally spilling out. "I've loved him since we were teenagers. Before Meredith died. Before everything went wrong. Mom knew she's always known. She used that too, kept us apart, then brought us together when it suited her plans. And Jace? What about your son?" Laurel couldn't meet his eyes. "I told myself he wouldn't suffer, that it would be over quickly." Talon activated the recording device in his pocket. "I want you to tell me everything, Laurel. About the insurance fraud. About the murder plot. About what happened with your sister. About your loyalty to Reese. All of it." "Why?" she asked, suddenly suspicious despite her distress. "So you can go to the police?" "So I can understand," Talon lied smoothly. "So I can make sense of how my wife became someone who could push her family off a cliff." It was the opening she needed, the chance to justify herself, to unburden her soul. And Laurel took it, words tumbling out in a torrent of confession and rationalization. She spoke of Eloise's manipulations, of Reese's promises, of the real estate development that would make them all rich. She confirmed Reese's story about Meredith's death, adding details that made Talon's stomach turn. She explained how Eloise had orchestrated her husband's accident years earlier, coaching Laurel through her role as witness. And finally, she described the plan to kill Talon and Jace, the life insurance policy Eloise had insisted they increase 6 months earlier, the careful selection of the hiking location, the calculated pushes that were supposed to look like a tragic misstep. "I've hated myself every day since," she finished, tears streaming down her face. "I can't sleep, can't eat. I keep seeing Jace's face as he fell, hearing his scream. She looked up at Talon, desperate. How is he? Is he okay? He has nightmares, Talon replied coldly. About his mother trying to kill him. Laurel flinched. I deserve that. I deserve worse. She crawled forward, reaching for him. Please, Talon, if you have any mercy left, let me see him one more time. Let me tell him I'm sorry. Talon stepped back, beyond her reach. No, Jace will never see you again. What are you going to do? Fear crept back in her voice. Turn me into the police? I haven't decided yet, Talon said, though he had. The recording in his pocket would ensure justice was served, one way or another. But right now, I'm going to walk away. And you're going to live with what you did just like I have to. Please, she sobbed. Don't leave me like this. Kill me if you want. I deserve it. Just don't leave me to face her alone. Talon looked at her, this broken woman who had once been his wife, the mother of his child, his partner in building a dream that had turned to nightmare. He felt no pity, no forgiveness, just a cold certainty that justice would find her, with or without his direct hand. Goodbye, Laurel, he said, turning away. Her sobs followed him down the trail, but he didn't look back. Some betrayals cut too deep for reconciliation. Some wounds could never heal. The woman he'd married was dead to him, replaced by the stranger who had pushed their son off a cliff. As he reached the trailhead, where Hazel waited in a nondescript car, he handed her the recording device. Did you get all that? Hazel checked the device and nodded. Every word. What now? Now we finish this, Talon replied. Once and for all. 24 hours after Talon's confrontation with Laurel, the carefully constructed web of lies that Eloise Varner had built began to unravel spectacularly. First came the financial collapse. Hazel, using her considerable hacking skills, transferred evidence of Eloise's illegal activities, including the real estate bribery scheme and the fraudulent insurance claims, to several financial regulators simultaneously. By noon, federal agents had frozen all accounts associated with Eloise Varner and Reese Kincaid. Next came the media storm. An anonymous source, Hazel, working through untraceable channels, released Laurel's recorded confession to select journalists, along with documentation of the Varner family's criminal history. By evening, the story was breaking across national news. The wealthy society widow who had orchestrated multiple murders, including the attempted killing of her own grandson. Eloise was arrested at her Portland penthouse, the cameras capturing her expression of aristocratic outrage as officers led her away in handcuffs. Reese, already panicked from Kellen's fake raid, attempted to flee the country but was detained at the airport. Laurel, however, vanished. Whether warned by some sixth sense or simply broken by her confrontation with Talon, she disappeared hours before the authorities arrived at the house to question her. A statewide manhunt was launched, but Talon suspected she'd gone to ground somewhere. Even her mother couldn't find her. It's done, Hazel reported as they gathered at a new safe house, a coastal property she owned under an alias. Eloise is facing multiple charges, including conspiracy to commit murder. Reese is cooperating fully, trying to save himself. The insurance company has rescinded the death benefits claim and is opening a fraud investigation. What about us? Breyer asked, gesturing to where Jace played with a puzzle in the next room. Legally, you and Jace are still dead. Talon had considered this carefully. We need new identities. A fresh start somewhere Laurel can't find us. I've been working on that, Hazel said. I have contacts who can create foolproof documentation. New names, new backgrounds, new social security numbers. Untraceable. Is that really necessary? Breyer asked. With Eloise in custody and Reese singing like a canary, you could come forward. Be the hero of the story. Get your life back. Talon shook his head. Laurel's still out there. She might be running now, but she's desperate. Desperate people do unpredictable things. He glanced toward Jace. I won't risk his safety again. Where will you go? Breyer asked quietly. East Coast, Talon decided. Maybe somewhere quiet by the water. Jace likes the ocean. I'll come with you, Hazel said unexpectedly. At least until you're settled. You'll need protection until this all blows over. Talon studied her, surprised by the offer. You don't owe us anything, Hazel. Your debt to Breyer is more than paid. This isn't about debt anymore, she replied simply. It's about doing what's right. That boy deserves a chance at a normal life after everything he's been through. 6 weeks later, as autumn painted the Maine coastline in brilliant reds and golds, Talon stood on a small private beach, watching Jace chase gulls along the shore. Their new home, a modest but comfortable house overlooking the Atlantic, stood behind them, its weathered shingles blending with the landscape. Connor and Jake Mitchell, father and son, according to their new documentation. A custom furniture maker and his boy, recently moved from the Midwest after the death of Connor's wife. A simple, believable story that asked few questions and invited little scrutiny. That Talon's hair was different now, his beard gone, his appearance altered just enough to avoid recognition. Jace seemed to be adapting well to their new life, making friends at the local school, sleeping through most nights without nightmares. Hazel appeared beside him, hair now a natural brown instead of blue-black, her tattoos covered by long sleeves. Rebecca's bakery in town is hiring, she commented. I'm thinking of applying. Might be nice to do something normal for a change. Rebecca now, is it? Talon asked with a hint of amusement. Their new neighbor, who had become Hazel's alias. Rebecca Palmer, grieving sister-in-law, helping the widower and his son start over. She shrugged. Seemed plausible enough. They stood in companionable silence, watching Jace construct an elaborate sandcastle with focused determination. Any news? Talon asked quietly. Eloise's trial starts next month, Hazel replied. Reese took a plea deal. 15 years, eligible for parole in 8. Still no sign of Laurel. Talon nodded, unsurprised. She'll surface eventually. And when she does, we'll be ready. His voice was calm, resolved. I meant what I said on that cliff. No mercy. No forgiveness. Not after what she did to Jace. Speaking of which, Hazel nodded toward the beach. He's calling you. Jace was waving excitedly, beckoning Talon to see his creation. The sandcastle had taken shape a fortress with multiple towers and a moat, protected on all sides. Dad, come look. It's our stronghold. Talon walked down to join his son, crouching beside him to admire the work. It's perfect, buddy. Nobody's getting through those walls. That's the idea, Jace said seriously. It's where the good guys live, safe from the bad guys. Simple childish play, but the metaphor wasn't lost on Talon. They were building their fortress here, a new life, a new beginning, protected by vigilance and the lessons of betrayal. As the sun began to set over the Atlantic, casting long shadows across the sand, Hazel joined them at the shoreline. It's done, she said quietly. Just got word from my contact. The last of the money transfers are complete, the documentation is buried, and the trail is cold. No one will find us here. No more threats. Jace asked, picking up on the subtext with his usual perceptiveness. No more threats. Hazel confirmed, ruffling his hair affectionately. Talon looked out at the endless horizon where sea met sky. The anger that had driven him for so long hadn't disappeared. It had transformed into something colder, more controlled. A vigilance that would never fully fade, that he wouldn't forget. Couldn't forgive. But for the first time since that day on the cliff, he felt something like peace settling into his bones. Not happiness that was still too distant ashore, but the quiet satisfaction of justice, served and family preserved. Come on, he said, taking Jace's hand. Time to go home. As they walked back toward the house, he didn't smile. But peace finally settled in his eyes.